People who have had friends stab you in the back. What is the story? We, my husband and I, had a friend that we helped get back on his feet, paid off some tickets he had, got his license reinstated, hooked him up with a solid connection for a reasonable, well-running car to replace his beater, and gave him a place to live and a job, automotive repair. He decided it was a better choice to tell all our customers we were overcharging them. Spoiler, we weren't. And he'd do the jobs cheaper if they'd bring it to him at his house. This was a short time after he moved out of our house, after never repaying anything he owed us. Not that we'd asked. Broke my heart. Story 2. My wife said she needed some time for herself, so she went to stay at her mom's for a while. One day, I went to pick up my kids and walked in on her and my best friend having sex. Turns out it had been going on for a while and she knew him before she knew me, which I had no clue about. Edit. This kind of blew up and I can't really reply to every comment, question, so I just wanted to add a few things. 1. When I said the affair had been going on for a while, I mean for several months before I found out. This was after my second son was born. I have no doubts as to whether my kids are actually mine or not. 2. Yes, they are now my ex-wife and ex-best friend. 3. This happened nearly 16 years ago now. It was a very dark period in my life, but I'm great now. I got 2 great kids out of the relationship. I wouldn't have met my wife if this hadn't happened. Also, I believe I'm a stronger person having gone through the whole ordeal. 4. Just know that if you're going through something horrible in life and your heart and mind are broken, there is hope for things to get better. It just takes time. Story 3. I had a best friend that I knew for 16 years. She got pregnant and her parents tried to kick her out. Her parents wanted her to get an abortion, but she refused. One of our HS friends told me someone should push her down a flight of stairs so she can miscarry. I told her that's a very bad idea and defended my best friend. The next day, the principal came by my class to ask me if I could attend a meeting about something important. If I didn't attend, I was going to be expelled. When I arrived to the meeting, our shared friend claimed I was going to shove my best friend down flights of stairs so she can miscarry. My best friend believed her. We stopped talking after that. Story 4. Friend told me they weren't doing anything for their birthday. On the day of their birthday, photos appeared on Facebook of them out with the rest of our friends. They're not my friends anymore. Story 5. Years ago, when I did a health sciences undergraduate degree, most of the cohort was determined to get into medical school. Our medical school program mainly accepted students from only our competitive undergraduate course due to subject prerequisites. We all knew each other and were friendly, hanging out together and forming study groups. Many of my friends were great. We shared tips, resources, practiced exams, and interviews together, but there were a handful who really wanted to get into medical school, and since the program ranks applicants mainly based on undergraduate results, the better your friends perform, the lower your ranking is for selection. Near application time, some of us would head off to the university library to borrow out textbooks to find chapters or page numbers that the lecturer mentioned would be on the exam, and they would be ripped out. You'd go and find another library copy of the textbook, and that page would be ripped out too. All of them totally removed in a hurry. I didn't believe that someone from our cohort did it until interview practice began. Students began obtaining copies of the questions from previous years and lying when others asked if they had it. I saw someone give a terrible, awful interview answer, and the other student would give them glowing feedback and inform them they should say that word for word during the interview. It was a crap show, and a lot of relationships fell apart or were never the same again. Commenter? In the UK, I have heard of similar practices for pupilages. Not sure if that's the right word, but trainee barristers. One girl got offered 2 places and was discussing with us which one to take, and her best friend left the room. Turned out she had called one of them pretending to be her friend, calling to decline a place and recommend herself. Fortunately, they caught on, but sadly, this was apparently common enough for them to be familiar with this kind of scam. Story 6. I booked a table for 6 people to watch a sports event at a bar. I tell them so. All 5 friends say, okay, we will be there. No one shows up or even has the decency call or text that they were not coming. Commenter 1. A similar thing happened to me a couple years back. I hosted a little Halloween party at my place for 4 friends, and even though it was a month in the making, all of them flaked. I don't know about you, but that really took the wind out of my sails, and I haven't hosted any get-togethers since. Commenter 2. Sorry that happened to you. This just happened to my 11-year-old little sister, BBBS, and I was heartbroken for her. She had a slumber party planned with about 4 friends, and she'd been talking about it for over a month. Halloween is her favorite, and she had all these cute, not too scary slumber party plans and crafts we made a couple weeks ahead of time that had truth or dares in them. None of them came. They all forgot to tell their parents. I suggested maybe next year she makes paper invitations that her friends can give their parents so they for sure know about it. Turns out that's exactly what she did, and they still ducked it up somehow. Story 7. Made plans to go see a movie with my friends for my 16th birthday and planned it weeks in advance. Everybody bailed the day before of, but I decided to still go see the movie. Ran into my whole group of friends leaving the movie theater while buying popcorn. Story 8. I had a good bud of mine, who's the godfather of my son, living with me and my wife. I travel a lot for work and was out of the country for about 6 months in the Middle East. Came back and found out she was pregnant with twins and that they weren't mine. Story 9. He accused me of assaulting his younger sister, who was basically my little sister too at the time. It's completely false, and it's the most mind-boggling thing that's ever happened to me. Story 10. Asked 2 of my friends if they wanted to live together in college. Then one of them asked another person in our friend group if he wanted to join in as well. Then they asked another and another. And then, once there were too many people for one apartment, they dropped me out of it. No longer friends with any of them. It was kind of a wake-up call, though, because I definitely gave way too much of myself to those people, not knowing that I was the most expendable one. It really taught me not to put others on a pedestal and respect myself more, and has since led to me developing far more healthy relationships that bring me a lot of happiness. Story 11. My best friend since 4th grade called her my soul sister. I genuinely was so grateful to have what I thought our friendship was. She fell on hard times, got weirdly religious, and stopped working while going to a private uni. I was always there for her, shoulder to cry on, visited her all the time because she didn't have any friends, and I knew she was lonely, helped her with groceries and rent, helped her family out. One day, she came over, and after buying her groceries, she told me a higher power has been telling her to cut me off for 2 years, and she had to listen. Now she wants to be friends again. Isa, hard note from me, dog. Story 12. Best friend stopped talking to me after my dad died. Took the whole friend group with him. Apparently, I was too emotional. I was 13. Having my entire friend group walk away from me when I was in such a crafty place stuck with me forever. Story 13. My best friend successfully picked up my boyfriend, then said she was doing me a favor, because if he really loved me, he wouldn't have responded positively to it. What a heck? Story 14. In 7th grade, she wrote a 10-page letter on all the reasons I should take my own life, and had all but one of my friends sign an agreement after I confided in her that I felt like something was wrong with me. Early undiagnosed depression. Go figure. The day she gave it to me was arguably the worst day of my life at the point because my parents told my sister and I that they were considering divorce and my grandmother died. Story 15. I had one friend who honestly wasn't my favorite person because she was really manipulative, but I never said anything bad about her. I found out that she had been crap-talking me to all of our mutual friends and telling them all that I did horrible things that I never did. Ended up essentially being pushed out of that entire friend group, and it ruined a lot of my high school experience. Story 16. I had one friend. I was bullied by everyone at elementary school. Because my friend would be bullied too when they hung out with me at school, we only played outside of school. One day, a popular kid asked to play with me during recess. I was ecstatic, until after a while they said, "You're not as bad as friend said you are." And that's how I learned why I was bullied. Story 17. I had some friends who were always talking crap about me, found out from another good friend. And one day, A came to school in my brand new jeans that costed around 150 euros, and they put glue on my chair while I was in the bathroom. I sat on it. I asked which one of them did it. None of them said a word. We went to the principal's office, and these pios had the balls to say that I put it there to get them in trouble. Their parents were called, and I earned around 200 euros and a new pair of jeans. Story 18. A guy who seemed like a good mate when it was just us. And then as soon as there was someone else or a group, he took the piss out of me and tried to make me the butt of all jokes. Even worse if there were girls around. After a while, I called him out on it, and he was just like, "Dude, it's just a joke," but I was done with him after that. I saw him randomly earlier this year after years of no contact, and it was amicable. And we caught up a bit on how we're getting on with our lives, and while he has grown up and become a bit more grounded, there's been no intention of rebuilding a bridge. I think if I ever met someone who has that side to their personality, I'd drop them like a hot potato. Story 19. Grew up going to the same church and met my friend and her family when I was 14. We grew up together, hung out, and our families would be together all the time. Fast forward many years, and I am dating a guy that I fell in love with for almost 3 years at the time. He went to the oil fields for work. I went to visit him and could tell something was off a bit, took the train from my town to Williston, 22 hours to get there. Visited him for 5 days, and on the last day he got up and goes to shower. I grab his phone. We had an open policy with each other that either could be on each other's phones. I found the emails between my friend and him. My family still hangs out with her family and her. I refuse to be around or speak to her. Story 20. A quiet girl I made friends with would only sit with me in class just so she can go snitch about me to my ex-friends. She would literally sit next to me for 1 or 2 classes, randomly, then go sit with them later. I called her out on it after she came to sit next to me and told her, "Why do you even bother sitting with me when we both know you're just trying to get crap to talk about me with them? When I come back from the bathroom, you better go sit somewhere else." I was usually very quiet, and that was the first time I stood up for myself. Story 21. IDK if this counts, but it hurt. In HS, I had who I thought was my best friend, almost inseparable. Our favorite band at the time was Good Charlotte, and they were on tour. She got tickets and forced a third-party friend who didn't even like them to go with her instead of me. Not saying she owed me, but if it was me, I would take my best friend who likes the band instead of someone who doesn't want to be bothered. It always sat wrong with me. Story 22. In 2014, I woke up Jan. First in horrible pain. I ended up needing an emergency surgery to remove my gallbladder. I was a single mom to 2 kids under 5 and had just moved back to my hometown after living out of state. We'd had to leave a really crafting living situation and had only been back about a month, and I'd not found a job at that point. I had had a really close family friend who had been living with me before I had moved back, and he ended up homeless. So I bought him an $80 bus ticket and got him back to our hometown and let him stay with me a few days. He quickly found another place to stay, but we had invited him to my youngest son's 2nd birthday, which is the 6th of January. I was like 4 days out from surgery at this point and could barely make it down my stairs at this point. So he offered to go and pick up the pizza and cake for my son for me. We didn't have a huge party or anything. I was on food stamps and had cash assistance since my son's dad was not involved at all and did not pay child support. Even so, I offered for him to get himself a small pizza to take back to the girl he was staying with since her and her kids couldn't make it over. So party goes great. Everyone has a good time, especially both my kids. A few days later, my grandma was going to go grocery shopping for me, so I go to get my card and realize it's not there. I never got it back from the guy, and I forgot he even had it since I was all doped up on pain meds from surgery. I tried calling him like 5 times and he didn't answer, so I get onto my account online to check my balance, and he took everything. I had like $600 in cash, paid my rent and bought my kids the things they needed. And then I had like $750 in food stamps. All of it was gone. He let the girl he was staying with convince him to steal my money from me. I'd only used the money to buy the bus ticket and the pizza and cake for my son since I'd been in the hospital for the first 4 days of the year and only home for 2 after that. It is still to this day the most intentionally ducked up thing anyone has ever done to me, mostly because it was such a huge damn you to my kids. Like, who steals from a single mom recovering from a life-saving surgery on her kid's birthday, especially after I helped him? Like, holy crap. Story 23. In college, my best friend and I had an art class together with a guy I was hanging out with on the regular, getting to know each other to see if there was anything more there. He and I hung out, messed around, had fun, etc. Nothing formal or spoken just yet, but we communicated daily. We were more than friends, but not a dedicated couple. One day, I stopped by his house after a morning class for a reason that I forget. Knocked, no answer, so I let myself in the unlocked door. Small Kansas town, nobody locks anything. So I could leave him a note, pre-cell phones, texting, at least for me. Well, her purse was on the chair by the door. Nobody answered when I called out his name. Or hers. His car was there. Her purse was there. They were there. Ugh. I got back at her, though, almost 20 years later. She friend requested me on Facebook, and I denied that git. Take that, Jessica. Story 24 was at a party with my cousin and his friends. I just moved, so I didn't know them or anyone at the party. I start talking to this really pretty girl. We wander away from the party and start talking. Really hit it off. We kiss some and then head back. My ugly ass excited and nervous. We drink some more, she gets more and more physical. We move to a bedroom. Right when I go to close the door, my cousin's buddy comes up and say they need me. I'm like, all right, so we start walking. I turn back and see my cousin and one of his friends go in the room behind me. I was like, hey, my cousin just went in that room. Dude straight up tells me my cousin likes her and he was told to get me away from her. I go back to the room, it's been a couple minutes. They have her spit roasted. Didn't learn my lesson, took another 6 months for me to finally cut him and his crap friends out of my life. Story 25. Been very good friends for over 2 years. Their roommate moved out and they asked me if I want to move into their spare room. I was very happy to live with my good friends and I did everything I could to be the best roommate possible. After 3 weeks, they found another source of income and kicked me out. First, they offered to help me find another accommodation, but the next day they changed their minds and just told me to leave by the end of the month. It was 7 days until the end of the month. They didn't spoke to me ever since. When we met somewhere in town, they acted like they never seen me before. I have no ducking idea what I did wrong. Story 26. I've told bits and pieces of this story before, but in short, several years ago, I moved to Florida. Almost immediately after I met a friend, he was a great guy, so I thought. And we'd constantly hang out / he'd show me around the town, this state, etc. About a year and a half of knowing him, he stole a couple of my credit cards and racked up really big bills. Unfortunately for me, and I know this now but didn't then, I simply thought calling the credit card company to report your card stolen and canceling the account also vacated the charges. That's not true. You actually have to formally contest the charges separately, and you only have 60 days. By the time I realized this, it was too late. I tried in vain to semi-reconcile with him to try to get a payment plan. He begged me not to call the police. I regret now that I didn't. I did believe that he had fallen on hard times and he would get back on his feet and try to repay me. That didn't happen, although later on he got arrested for something else and was put on probation. I figured that would have been the best time to try to recoup the money lost. I had fallen behind on these payments and my credit was starting to suffer. I had to drop out of college because of that. I did try instead to take him to small claims court. I do realize that civil court is not criminal, but with him now being a convicted felon, I might stand a better chance at looking much better. Instead, when we got to court, he denied everything, said everything was a gift, and completely slandered me in open court. Why he was allowed to get away with it is beyond me, but that case was dismissed. I got nothing. My credit suffered for years because of that. I eventually did save up enough money to file for bankruptcy to just get rid of that debt that I couldn't repay, nor should I have had to. I have never really forgiven him for what he did to me. I feel like he still lives around. Luckily, I haven't seen him in several years. I don't know what I'd even say if I ever did encounter him. The bankruptcy did eliminate that debt, so I cannot and will not ever say he owes me anything monetarily, but he owes me a huge apology. But like I said, I would seriously doubt the sincerity of it and likely wouldn't accept it anyway. I think the best is as it is now. He just stays away from me. Story 27. Told a friend a secret in high school. I suffer from major depression and social anxiety. Don't tell anyone I'm seeing a therapist. That took a lot for me to say. I was making progress. Friend proceeded to tell the entire class. People thought I was crazy. That's high school. I stopped being friends with the few friends I had. I was more alone. I graduated high school with 0 friends. Thanks. Don't worry though. In college, I blossomed into a bearded man with no fears. Life has been swelling ever since. Story 28. I had a college roommate who had been a high school best friend. He was sometimes a banana, particularly when he was drunk. One night, we had both been drinking. I'm not exactly sure what was said, but he left the room and apparently went and peed on my bed. He then left the room and went to a mutual friend's dorm. I went and watched my sheets and flipped my mattress over, then poured a bunch of water all over his bed and put a nice-looking lump of peanut butter on his pillow. I couldn't bring myself to actually piss or crap on his stuff. Then I went to our friend's place where folks were hanging out. He had this sly look on his face when I came in, and he made a comment about pissing on my bed. I told him that he was a git for doing that, and then leaving the dorm with his room unlocked. The look on his face flipped in a second, and he ran out of there. I had locked my door, so I had a good laugh about it and brushed it off. I discovered that he had gotten into my room. I later found out he had gone to an RA, told them he lived in my room and was locked out, and they asterisk unlocked my door for him and left him alone. WTF. He peed on my bed, again, peed on my cell phone, peed on my computer, and peed in a bottle of Adderall that I had a prescription for. Hundreds of dollars of damage. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that while I was dealing with the fallout, he was hanging out with our mutual friends and a group of girls we were all friendly with. I don't know what he told them, but none of them would even speak to me afterward. They wouldn't even tell me why they weren't speaking to me. He decided that he was just going to ignore me and our mutual friend, roommate, and pretend we didn't exist for the rest of the year. He poisoned my relationship with high school friends and new college friends. And after an evening in which he did the vilest crap I have ever experienced, and I couldn't even bring myself to piss on his bed, he has reached out to me over the 15 or so years since then. In big groups, I can be polite, but this is the only person I have ever not been able to forgive. To rub salt in the wound, he is still friends with a girl I was crushing on at the time, and who I know had been attracted to me as well. She was a part of the group that never spoke to me again, and it has to be because of a lie he told her. Also, he continued to leverage the relationship he had developed with a relative of mine who was kind of a big deal at the university and in the town. My relative would tell us to get together and work things out, and I would say I can't do that and ask him to cut off contact. He thought we were just in a spat or something, and kept trying to be a mediator, while continuing to help my friend and get him into programs at the school and jobs afterward. Stopping here because this is long, but obviously this has opened the wound for me. My former best friend peed on a bunch of my things, then managed to have an entire group of friends turn on me, ruining important friendships. Still don't know how that last part happened. Story 29. This all starts out poorly by me following my boyfriend to the same college he went to. He was a year older. Still don't regret it after all, as I loved my school and everything else out those 4 years. We were a bit off again, on again, first semester I was there. Again, red flags. My new across the hall mate in my dorm became my best friend. She and boyfriend didn't really like each other, but it wasn't a huge deal. Just a personality clash, and she didn't like how he treated me with the on-off crap. Our school had a winter term in January. Boyfriend lived off campus, so he was there and best friend was taking a class. I was home. Best friend was lonely and didn't know many other people on campus for winter term, so I told her to hang out with the boys in my boyfriend's frat house, whom she had friendly-ish with. So they all start hanging out. And by that, of course, I mean they start hooking up. I get back to school, and I immediately can tell things are weird with best friend. Unbeknownst to me at the time, Boyfriend has had basically our entire relationship to practice covering his tracks and is a smooth and practiced liar by this point. Within a couple weeks, it all comes out that they'd been hooking up, and best friend actually tells me, "You know how much I've wanted a boyfriend. If you were a good friend, you'd let me have him." Why I still wanted to date him at this point is beyond many, many people's comprehension, including mine. But it did involve a dog that I was beyond attached to. I do fault them both equally, and did at the time too. I don't remember being mad at either of them, as much as I was just devastated. He was apologetic from the start. She was mean and manipulative. Again, not trying to say it was the other woman's fault, just explaining how it all went down. It totally sucked, and I felt so betrayed by both of them. Unsurprisingly, I have had a lot of trust and loyalty issues since. Story 30. I was taking a culinary class with my buddy, and he walked behind me with a knife and didn't say anything. I stepped back and got mildly stabbed in the lower back. After 10 years of friendship, you think you know a guy? Story 31. I'm late, but whatever. My best friend and I worked together for 3 years at a restaurant. I was the night manager and was really cool with all of the employees, but especially her. We hung out outside of work all the time. She went with me to the beach and carnivals with my kids, who adored her. She started dating this guy at work, who was slowly becoming a drug addict. I could see it. My crackhead aunt made it easy to spot, but no one else could. After he ducked up for the 10th time in a week and started nodding out at the sink, he was fired by my boss on a Saturday. The following Monday night at closing time, he came in the back door wearing a ski mask. I was walking towards the front door to lock it when I was grabbed from behind and felt something cold against my neck. It took me a second to realize it was a knife. He said, "Get me the money," but I couldn't move. I was literally paralyzed with fear. My brain was screaming at me to move towards the register, but my feet just wouldn't move. He screamed, "Give me the money again," but I was frozen. He then drugged me to the register, made me open it, grabbed a fistful of 20s, and ran out the back. My best friend at the time, this whole thing went down. Conveniently in the bathroom. I was still in shock, trying to explain to the police on the phone what had just happened. When I hung up the phone, she asked what had happened, and I told her I had just been robbed at knife point. Her exact response was, "I hope no one thinks I had anything to do with this." What? So long story short, they find the guy. I told them I recognized his voice, and he rats her out on the setup. The setup was her texting him in all clear when only she and I were in the building. He didn't have to, though. She quit the next day and stopped replying to my texts. When I found out, I was heartbroken. This is someone who was around my kids regularly. I was diagnosed with extreme anxiety and PTSD after being robbed and still have flashbacks randomly. If someone comes up behind me and startles me, I panic. The amount of money my life was worth to them, $440, the punishment they received. He got 2 years in jail, 50 years suspended, 1 year of probation. She got 1 year probation. I had to quit the job I had over a decade because I couldn't stand being in there anymore. A year and a half ago, my best friend at the time set me up to be robbed at knife point. Edit. Moved the to the bottom. Story 32. Cannot say we were friends when I think of it, but he was someone I hang with. I was bullied in school. Basically, I did not know how to defend myself, so it was sort of a love-hate relationship. At lunchtime, I was going to get my lunch as usual. Started to see kids throwing food around the hallway. I did not bother until I saw that my lunch was the one being thrown around the hallway. My sandwich, my food, everything, they were all cheating. When I went to get my lunch back, or what was left of it, I was about to pick it up, and my friend took the lunch out of my hands and threw it back in the party. He actually took the lunch out of my closet when I wasn't there and started this whole mess. I just left crushed. I think that the relationship ended. XDPS. Whoa! That blew up. This story happened when I was 12 years old. I learned later that this kid was beaten by his dad at home and had to go live in the forest next to his house, in a tent, for several months. Story 33. A woman I thought was my friend. We worked together for years. Our kids were friends. I helped her and her husband out when he was having mental health problems. She was in my sister's wedding party. Appeared in court as a witness for my ex-wife in her bid to gain full custody. Thankfully, she failed, and I now have custody of my kids. I haven't spoken to my friends since. Story 34. At the beginning of summer going into high school, my 2 friends and I were left alone at my buddy's house. We snuck into his parents' liquor cabinet and all tasted some vodka. Being that it was my first time tasting hard liquor, I took 1 sip and instantly disliked it. I decided to not drink anymore because it was gross. One of my friends started pounding shots even though it was his first time drinking. He had maybe 4 shots and started feeling tipsy. We proceeded to marvel at his drunken self for the rest of the night. Fast forward 2 weeks and I'm riding in the car with my mom. She begins to ask me if I have anything I want to tell her, and like any 13-year-old in my position, I said no. She then goes on a rant about how disappointed she is in me for drinking alcohol at my friend's house and proceeds to ground me for basically the entire summer. Come to find out, my friend who got drunk started feeling guilty and told his mom what he did. He was a spoiled kid and his mom didn't punish him, while I, on the other hand, got grounded for taking 1 sip. Strict parents, man. Story 35. I remember I got a holographic Charizard when I was a kid, and I was so excited to show it off at school the next day. Then, about halfway through the day, it goes missing. I looked everywhere and I could not find it and was super bummed out. The very next day, this kid named Marcelo, who I thought was a friend, shows up with his own Charizard. I couldn't prove it was mine. I knew in my heart that it was. The timing was just too convenient that I lost mine, and then he gets one. Story 36. I was assaulted in college. I went through the school's horrible reporting process. The dean of students tried to have a man-to-man conversation with my assailant during the hearing, and I wasn't able to have my attorney speak for me. I had to cross-examine my assailant myself. The school found him responsible, but didn't kick him off campus. Instead, he got a one-day program on consent as his punishment. It was horrible. I tried to be a normal person, even though I lived within 1 square mile of my assailant for 2 years and I was generally a mess. I would see him all the time. I relied heavily on a group of women in the women's center and the director of the center. They were my lifeline when I wasn't in therapy twice per week. There was one person I was very close to. We can call her V. She had been through some tough stuff too. She encouraged me as I started to date someone, who we'll call C, and regain some remote semblance of normality. What I didn't know was that C was credibly accused of abuse right before we started to date. V knew about it because her boyfriend helped the victim report anonymously, but didn't tell me because she thought I was happy for the first time in a long time. I actually struggled throughout the entire relationship. C would guilt me into having sex with him, and it devolved into other unhealthy things. Before and during the relationship, V told everyone in the women's center about the report of the abuse involving C. It was apparently a frequent topic of conversation, despite the fact that confidentiality is supposed to be practiced very strictly regarding assault reports, so that the victim is protected from possible retaliation. When I finally made the decision to break up with C, I called W to tell her. She then casually offered something that she thought would help me break up with him. He was reported for raping someone right before we started dating, and she identified the victim to me, and told me that no one told me because they didn't want me to be unhappy. All of the people in the women's center broke confidentiality to tell each other about it, but apparently they didn't consider the one person who didn't know their own safety was at risk every minute with C. W then said in an effort to justify the everything, "But it's okay. You taught him how to have a consensual relationship." I ended the phone call and found myself in the worst depths of depression for days. I decided to cut all of those people involved out of my life. What kind of friends don't make reasonable efforts to look out for my personal safety? To this day, I still don't trust other women, or anyone really. Story 37. Friend was really close with me and my girlfriend. Friend was my girlfriend's confidant while we were dating. I trusted Friend because he was a good guy up to that point. Friend was constantly pinning her against me, making bigger deals out small stuff, saying I was mistreating her by not being with her constantly because I was working a full-time job while in school. Girlfriend cheats on me with Friend. Friend tried to turn everyone against me. Only person who still associates with Friend is girlfriend, and they're getting married in the next few months. Story 38. Gave best friend cousin a great 6-figure job. First, he lived with me for 2 years, and I showed him the business ropes. Groomed him to take over as boss. Gave him a bonus so he could buy a car. Gave him a bonus so he could have enough for a down payment to buy my house and have it. Plus, gave him a big raise. Enough to cover a payment to me. I owner financed the house I sold to him, then gave him a raise out of my company so he could just pay me out of his increased salary. This meant he got a free house. This guy was my best friend. He started to ask for bigger bonuses and advocate for the other bosses to get big $30,000 and $50,000 bonuses. He made me think we really need to give this or they would quit and it would be bad for the company. So I just did it. I was going through a separation and some hard times. Our friendship began to become a bit strained. It's hard to work with family and be best friends, etc. I thought nothing of it, but some weird vibes were going down. Ultimately, terrible weird fights were happening at work, and different folks were quitting. Then, a director woman accused him of harassment, something totally out of character for him. He then admitted to a 5-year affair with this woman. He cheated on his wife for that whole time. His wife was also a friend of mine, etc. I just never even knew. It took me a while to piece it all together, but he was getting big raises for her, and she would say she was going to quit. They negotiated that they would get Fridays off to do field work for the company. Later, they found out they were just hooking up every Friday and not working at all. He would talk me into these massive raises and bonuses for her to get her to stay. I fired them both and never talked to him again for a long time. I have since reached out to him and his wife to say we will always be family and I love them. No answer. He's such an ingrate that he is mad at me over all of this. I do not believe in cheating on your wife, but I understand that love is a powerful thing. The real issue was not my judging his betrayal of his wife, which I do, but it was that he kept it a secret from me and basically extorted my company after all the dollar and opportunity I just gave to him. passing over lots of other more deserving employees, nepotism, along the way. He acted like a big-time Christian too, always wearing a cross. I guess I wasted a lot of years helping someone I thought I knew, but he turned out to just be a worthless git. Story 39? A roommate I got along with more than a friend, but here goes. I lived near the Gulf of Mexico during Hurricane Katrina, and my house, among many others, was rendered uninhabitable. Housing was scarce, so I used roommates.com or something and moved to a trailer park in a woman's spare bedroom. I had 2 dogs. She told me she put me on the lease, and dogs were okay. Landlord came by, and it turned out I wasn't on the lease, and dogs were not allowed. Also, my German Shepherd got knocked up and just had puppies. Landlord was furious, and not at all sympathetic to my plight. She called the sheriff and they'd arrest me if I wasn't out by early AM. Sheriff confirmed this. I was young and didn't think to legally contest this. It was time to go. Relationship with the roommate obviously soured. I think a couple days before this, I sold 2 puppies to a neighbor. My crap roommate let my shepherd outside and went to work. My dog found the puppies, and her instincts to protect them made her snap at the neighbor. No bites or scratches, but with kids, they decided to give the pups back. So now I also have the cops saying my dog would be put in the pound if found outside. Day before I had to move out, I had a full day of work. Said what was up to my roommate and to not leave my dog outside. She left my dog outside and went to work herself. So I came home to find my poor dog had been outside all day, roaming free in a trailer park. I moved out with the landlady and sheriff watching me and laughing. I was broke, found a couch to crash on, but no dogs allowed. Paid to have my shepherd boarded till I found a home, but had to take the other dog and all the puppies to a shelter. All my family was 800 miles away. Nothing I could do. So yeah, I don't even remember the woman's name, but I'll never forget what she did. Story 40. I decided to be friends with this girl that was crying. Was okay at first. Then she started to show signs of being crazy. She wouldn't let me hang out with anyone else. And when I said that I would be right back, I had to use the bathroom. She started to cry and say that I would leave her. I, being naive AF, decided to stay with her. This continued until she literally punched one of my friends because I decided to hang out with them for a day instead of her. I tried to break it off, but then she wouldn't let me. She eventually threatened to kill me and our parents got involved, the principal too. Story 41. Oh boy. I had this friend who I used to shoot my guns with all the time. We were out in a field one day shooting my Mosin, and this git notices a deer and decided, hey, I should shoot that. So what does the damn head do? Poached a deer with my gun. Had a game warden show up at my house a week later asking about it, and I just ended up telling him the truth. Luckily, he didn't confiscate my rifle. Went right over to Duckhead's house and told him to get bent. Haven't talked to him since. Story 42. I wrote a whole novel, but since this will probably get buried, I'm gonna shorten it. My used-to-be best friend since middle school, Jay, moved in with my boyfriend and I. He listened to us have pleasure himself in practically every room in our apartment and bragged about it to one of our other middle school friends, all behind our backs. After sitting down with him and telling him how violated we felt, he seemed understanding and agreed to ground rules we set for coexisting until our lease is up. 1 more month, thank God. But now I'm hearing that he complained to the same friend that we're acting childish and that what he did wasn't even that bad. He even got his dad on his side, like what the heck? I'm angry and lost. I want him gone. Story 43. When I was a young guy in my 20s, I didn't have a lot of money. However, I was the kind of person who liked to save and buy good things so they would last. I bought a new fridge and a new vacuum cleaner. I had 3 guy friends who were living in another apartment together. They asked if they could borrow my vacuum cleaner and my old fridge, so I said yes. The vacuum cleaner came back 2 weeks later after much asking. It now leaked a small amount of gray smoke when used and was sort of spluttery and uneven. I found out from one of them that they used it to vacuum wet areas. As it wasn't theirs, and as far as they were concerned, it was free, they didn't bother to take care of it. So my new vac was ducked within a month. They borrowed a car from another friend of mine and theirs. They then used it to chuck donuts in an industrial area and damaged the clutch and other things. When I asked them to stop, they told me, it's okay, he will never know. Remember, this guy was their friend too. After 2 years, they said they were moving out. I kept asking them about the fridge. No response. Finally, once they were moved out, one of them told me, the fridge is still over there. If you want it, go and get it. Ducked the 3 of those guys. And life did. None of them has done well. In fact, 2 of them are pretty much ducked. And one of them has no friends left after stealing from mistreating, abusing all his friends. When you're a teen, young man, it's easy to build up a set of friends. But if you mistreat them, they're gonna disappear. And the older you get, the harder it is to make new friends. Don't be a banana to your friends. Otherwise, one day you'll be alone when you need help. Story 44. My high school friend group ditched me, and the few people, a whopping 2 of them, who supported me after I called out our sort of ringleader for harassing me. The worst part is that most agreed I was in the right too. They all just felt closer to him, I guess, and thought he deserved, well, actually asterisk, another asterisk, second chance. Though to be honest, I think at its core the issue was that I made them uncomfortable afterwards. Fast forward 3 or so years, and I no longer even interact with the larger social scene we were connected to, or really any social scene, which is disheartening because it's like I was cut off almost on accident. Meanwhile, the person I called out still gets invited to poetry open mics, art galleries, and is happily supported by a lot of the same people they were back then, all while successfully in university. I'm glad they've recovered and found themselves a bit. They had some huge problems, but I reserve my right to be bitter. Sometimes I feel like it's all I have. Story 45. They talked crap about me in a different language, in front of me. I'm not saying you can't speak your own language. You definitely can. It was just really clear they were talking about me. They pointed and giggled, and when I asked what they were talking about, they'd always say it was nothing. I always let it slide because I didn't have enough courage to ask them what's up. I considered them to be my best friends. One of the girls also screenshotted a text that I sent when I reached rock bottom. That night, I cried myself to sleep on the floor. I didn't think I should be alive, and I trusted them with my problem. I found out that she screenshotted me when I was deleting her old pictures from recently deleted to free up some space, when she asked me to take good pictures of her. I didn't think it'd be a big deal. We were kids, so there wasn't anything she would have to hide that's inappropriate. I never confronted her about it. To this day, I don't know who she sent that to. On graduation day, none of my best friends talked to me except once when the same girl who screenshotted my texts asked me to walk her to the washroom because she was wearing high heels. They also kicked me out of their table and didn't take any pictures with me. I'm very definite that I wasn't the best kid at that time. I'm still not, and that I've also done bad things at that time that have most likely hurt others. But damn it, really hurt me when I noticed all of this a year later. Story 46. Had a friend from high school till about 4 years ago. About 8, 9 years total friendship. He was a very close friend, and one day confided in my boyfriend, now husband, and I that his roommate was moving out to live with his girlfriend, and he wouldn't make rent that month. Boyfriend and I had an apartment lease ending, so decided we could be of help and moved in. 2 months before our lease was up, 2 rent payments. Lived there for about 2 months and we found out we're pregnant and having a baby. Happy scenario. As roommate has informed us he wishes to turn over lease for the house to us to move back in with his parents. Perfect 3-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms and plenty of space. The day before we're set to meet up with the landlord, we come home to an eviction notice on the door and all of roommate's stuff is moved out. Call him, no answer. Call the number on the eviction notice from the landlord and find out he lied and never told the landlord anything. He wouldn't even work with us at all, just said we have 30 days to get fo. Roommate had been pocketing our rent for months, had 30 days to unexpectedly find a new place, pay first and last month in a security deposit, and move in the middle of Michigan winter. While pregnant, piece of crap. Story 47. I had some friends who lived in my street. They were literally the best friends I ever had. At the time, we were playing footy in the park and my friend fell over. His phone screen was smashed, old school Walkman phone, this was 10 years ago. Said I should pay for it. I was like, no way, man, if you play footy with a phone in your pocket and it gets broke, that's your fault. Next thing you know, all the friends turned against me and alienated me in the village I lived in. I got really depressed because my best friend from school, who I'm still best friends with now, lived 45 mins away. Next thing I knew, pizzas were being delivered and the police were being called to my house by all these restaurants. Then I started getting stones thrown at my house. My dad's BMW got vandalized and other stupid stuff. And my phone kept getting random calls from numbers I didn't know threatening violence. It turns out the phone was smashed before the game of football, and he thought my parents would just replace it. When I said no, they decided they didn't much care for me and wanted to see how far they could get with terroring my family. It got dealt with though, and I was best man at my friend's wedding this year. And him and my other best friend have each other's back 100% edit. The kids from the village have go nowhere lives, and I'm considerable better off without the negativity. Story 48. It's been about 2 years where my former best friend abandoned me after I almost died from an accident. I suffered a traumatic brain injury, temporal skull fracture, and severe thermal burns to my face and hand. I was in ICU and in the hospital for about a month. I apparently was texting her a crap ton of broken nonsense while in the hospital, because some thought it was a great idea to give someone with a severe brain injury access to a phone to talk to people. I don't remember doing it, but the things I was saying was nonsense. I was combining like 3 or 4 different things and trying to explain something, and it was just coming out like I was crazy. I had other friends tell me that I had called them and was speaking crazy and saying ducked up weird awkward crap, but they knew something was wrong but never held it against me. After I got out of the hospital, she stopped talking to me, and I never heard from her again. Still have no idea why. It sucked. My best friend, just up and gone at a time I needed them the most. It was all good though. Her bailing on me was the beginning of the catalyst that brought me and my wife, ex-GF at the time, back together, and we were married about 8 months later. I still think about my old friend though. I hope she figured herself out and is doing well, but a part of me doesn't care and hopes karma come back at her. No dharma for her. Story 49. Oh, I got one. I went to Korea for a year with the military straight out of training. I'd been dating this girl since high school and it was going pretty well. We still talked while I was in Korea, just not as much due to the time problems. While I was over there, we decided to take a break because it was hard for me to talk to her on my schedule, and same for her. We still talked occasionally, just not as much. Then I went to do some field training with my platoon and everything went downhill from there. I stopped talking to her, but once every few days, then it just changed to once a week maybe. We took a mutual break in the relationship during that time. A few months later, and we were out of the field, I decided to send her a text to see how she was doing, and it turned out she was saying someone else. I was sad, but I understood why she would do that. Then while I was talking to her saying it's okay and I knew it would happen, she dropped the bomb that it was one of my good friends from high school she was with now. The second she said that, all these memories started flowing back to me about him talking to her more, while I was gone and my buddies saying they talked more and were hanging out more often. Crap was the biggest backstab of my young life. Story 50. I had a friend who recently had no place to live, so we gave him a spare room. It had everything: bed, clothes, the works. But he would only ever sleep on the couch. We even paid for his food and escorts. Canada. Then one morning we are woken up by 4 people ransacking our house. He had told a bunch of his boys that we were scheming to make him disappear. So he invites them over, and while we are basically naked, they come in with weapons like knives, bats, and hammers. Stole a lot of stuff. The story doesn't end happy. He was never caught, and we have never heard from him again. In the process of moving out, our landlord came into the house, seen it was a mess, and without telling us, removed the remainder of our items like furniture, clothes, and had my vehicle towed. We tried to have our tenants' insurance work, but we couldn't remember what was stolen and what was taken by the landlord, so they didn't help us. My roommate had gone to live somewhere else with his family, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I was basically homeless with my pit bull for half a year. Then a friend of the family owned a condemned building and let me stay there. Before everything happened, I was making $25 an hour working with a friend. Said friend overdosed just before all this happened and the business shut down. I had a hard time finding a job after that and hit the bottle pretty hard, but I shared most of my meals with my dog. Story 51. I was medically discharged from the Army 6 years ago. I met the woman who'd be the mother to my child and settled down with them. Very happy. About a year later, I get a call from a guy that was basically the father I never had, and a mentor in ways during my time in the Army. He asked if I could be a character witness at a court-martial where he was accused of downloading CP on his laptop. The CP was definitely on his computer, but that's not something I knew him to do. Of course, I agreed to go. So I left my girl and my 2-month-old daughter for a few days just to help this guy out. It turns out he needed a scapegoat. He was found not guilty, and all it cost was my reputation. Everyone I served with now thinks I downloaded CP on his computer, which lead to crippling depression and major trust issues, making it impossible for me to get close to people. Story 52? Nothing that dramatic. People tend to abandon me when I'm at my lowest. Maybe I drive them away. I don't know. But nobody I really count on ever stays when I really need them. Story 53 was in the midst of a messy breakup. Friend told me he was there for me and that he knew I was hurtin' and that crap wasn't all my fault. Basically, he was there to listen and keep me from losing my crap, etc., etc. Tried to call him up on Friday night, a couple days after he said all that. Couldn't get him on the phone, but oh well. Friday night and all. Ex called me the next day all confessional and told me she'd hooked up with him and she was sorry and that she knew it was a crap thing to do. Called him, asked him all innocent like, "How was your Friday? What did you get up to?" etc. Just all casual. He was nervous but managed to stammer out some lie. I called him out on it and told him I knew what he was doing, ducking my soon-to-be ex-wife. He got all sorry dude on me. Damn that guy. Never spoke to him again. Can't come back from that. Wasn't even the ducking her that got to me. It was the lying. Friends don't piss on your back and tell you it's raining. Story 54? Mother Ducker stole $3K I loaned to him on a hard time he had, 10 years to ducking trash, then started telling everyone I owed him from all the good things he and his family did for me. I hate him and his family now for being that a hole, and above that, they call themselves decent Christians. Story 55. When I was about 25, my now former best friend since 4th grade told me that during middle school, when I was painfully awkward and for sure the weird kid, she and my other former best friend would deny being my friend to everyone else. They would tell people that they only let me think we are friends because they feel sorry for me. Learning that broke my heart. I thought that we were so close we hung out every weekend during school and even lived together after high school. Those were my only friends during those tough childhood years. And finding out that they weren't really my friends was so crafty. I was picked on a lot and always took solace in having 2 real best friends, even if they were my only friends. And then they stayed my friends into adulthood, except now I'm not sure about that either. Couldn't trust her after that. Story 56. We were getting ready for a party. They told me to go to the store to get blunts while they were breaking my 1/4 ounce of weed down. I went and came back. App was locked and everyone gone. I lived with them, so I was knocking on the door for their mother to answer. Not a single thing for 30 minutes. It's late at night and cold. I slide open the window and immediately the mother goes off on me. She was standing there, not answering the whole time. So after all of that, we get into a massive argument. Everyone comes back from the party and they smoked all of my weed before returning. They didn't even reimburse me. Then I had to move that weekend because of the fact that I tried to enter the house through the window. Bringing this up just made me upset because this was one of those things I put aside and did nothing about. Story 57. A friend's family fell on hard times. I had an emergency fund and let them borrow a 5-digit amount of money to swing their mortgage and groceries. A few years go by and there's no attempt at paying me back. The couple gets divorced and life goes on. One day the dude emails me and shows me an ad for a classic car for $11,000 and asks me what I think. He knows I'm into cars. I give him my opinion, but add at the bottom that maybe he might consider paying me back before spending money on frivolous toys. He already had 2 cars. He went off on an angry 2-page rant about how his ex-wife was the one who ducked me over and he was ripped off much worse. Blah, 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 and then never talked to me again. It was an expensive lesson to learn to never loan out money you can't afford to lose, and B, if it's friends and family, give them the money, don't loan it. It's not worth risking friendships over. I'm still owed that money, and it's been 15 years. Story 58. Can I vent? Is this a good place? 1. Okay. If we consider our partner's friends, my first girlfriend had a habit of cheating. 2. I was doing 18th birthday party. This is the biggest occasion for teens in Poland. Initially, everyone accepted, but a popular kid in the city made a huge party at his home that day, so I spent that day alone. 3. In college, in my group, there was a very rich guy who somehow hated me for being poor. He made sure that I was socially excluded. 4. I was helping someone who I considered my best friend. Let him stay when he had nowhere to go, borrowed him money for college, pulled him out of toxic relationship, got him a part-time job during college, drove him to the job interview on the other side of a country. After he got his life together, he started mocking me and laughing that he has a great job, a pretty girlfriend, and I have nothing. That, above, and the fact that my life isn't really going anywhere, gave me some type of anxiety and trust issues. I hate living in this world. Story 59. I have been playing in a metal band for many years. When I left it, I wanted to take a break from playing guitar, but I didn't want my instrument to be left unused in a corner, so I left it, with my amp, pedals, and all equipment, at my bass player's house so he could use it. Of course, this lovely guy took it all with him when he moved at the other side of the country. When I learned by someone else that he was gone, because he of course had not warned me before going, do I have to say he of course never answered my phone calls and texts? 20 years after, I still think about it every day because not only was it a rare model I could never replace, it was my very first guitar. I had bought it to a friend of mine who died a few months later, so it was a very important object to me. What a fool I've been to think you would simply be honest to me. After all these years, we had spent playing together. Story 60. I was the one who did the stabbing. 10th grade. Best friend was a bit of a troublemaker. Never went to school, would not come home for days on end, did a lot of substances. One day, his incredibly gorgeous mother called me at my home, which was crazy. She said she would take me to the new Hooters in town for dinner if I told her where he was. So of course I agreed. I didn't even think twice. We first went to Hooters. I got wings and curly fries, and I told her he was staying at his girlfriend's house across town. I got my leftover curly fries to go, and we drove 30 minutes to her house. His mom went to the door and came back with my buddy a few minutes later. He got in and saw me sitting there with curly fries and knew exactly what happened. He just said, "Really, dude?" And I pointed at the fries as if it was a justification. It took a while for him to trust me again, but we are still best friends and laugh about it now. Story 61. My friend got my boyfriend to break up with me and continued to talk crap about me to him while we were broken up to try to keep us broken up. Some of the things she did: the first time we ever hooked up, she told him the next day that I was dirty and he should get tested. She then told me he was getting tested like she wasn't the one who told him to do it. She also knew I was actually a huge prude at that time. She constantly told him I didn't actually like him / I actually liked his friend / I wanted to duck his friend / I wanted to break up, etc. This is what got him to break up with me. While we were broken up, she told him I was having a mental breakdown and was going crazy. She compared me to his ex-girlfriend who broke into his house and kind of stalked him for a bit. She told him I stole money from her to buy CK. This all came out after we got back together, and he showed concern for my drug problem. Story 62. Just happened today, actually. I threw a housewarming party for myself and invited 20-ish friends, family over. It's been 5.5 hours and no one has shown up or bothered to call. I specified no gifts and supplied about $250 worth of food drinks that'll go to waste now. Story 63. Not a friend, but a sister. I had this enormous crush on this guy. I was too shy to talk to him and just adored him from afar. Sister says, be his secret admirer. That way he can get to know you. For a month, I put notes and cards in his car a few times a week. One weekend, Sis and I go out and I see him. I point him out and tell her that's the guy I'm in love with. She tells me she's going to go talk to him about me and get us hooked up. I wait for 30 minutes. She doesn't return. I go inside the restaurant they are in, turn a corner to find her making out with him. That was a devastating blow. Story 64. I let a friend borrow part of my plastic dinosaur collection. It was pretty extensive, and I was really proud of it. I was in a cramped dorm, and at the time I appreciated that they weren't taking up space for a few weeks. I went to her room a few days before I moved out to get them back, and she locked her door and wouldn't let me in. I went back every day and sent other friends to try to get them, but to no avail. The day I moved out, she wasn't home and left the door unlocked, so I let myself in, and she had hidden them so I could only find one. I still have my half of the collection, but still can't believe what went down, considering we were both women in our 20s. Story 65. Maybe not that severe, but I was really close to a guy in theater when he one day just told me I was annoying, and I've been much quieter since then. It's been years, and to this day, I try not to talk too much so I don't annoy anybody. Story 66. Not sure if this counts as being stabbed in the back, but in high school, F was pretty much best friends with this kid, M, for about 7 months to a year until explaining for like the third time that I didn't want to date him. He abruptly stopped talking to me and said he wasted X amount of time being my friend. Story 67. A girl I knew in college invited me over with her friends to watch Supernatural or something like it. I wasn't a fan of the show or whatever. Afterwards, I was like, it was all right. I thought she was fine with this. She was not. She smashed a lamp into my face. It didn't break, but it did hurt. She kept telling me how wrong I was. Her friends told me she is just like that. Story 68. She was new at work. We clicked right away. She went to my family's baby shower, game nights. I had helped her with her husband's paperwork as he was a Middle Eastern immigrant. I gave her career advice, motivated her to stop doubting herself and even finish up her degree. And she went ahead and allied with people who wanted me out. She invented lies about my character, contributed to an incredible amount of stress in the work environment, and even invented a gossip about the boss in hopes I would spread them around. When I finally left, she messaged me saying people care more about themselves than they will ever care about you. I learned they're never to trust anyone at work and motivated me to start my own gig. She is still there, got a promotion, but will never be more than what she is a lying little hole. Story 69. A friend of mine told me to go and take my own life just like the rest of my family, over me not going to his house. To clarify, I have one sister who take her life and 2 brothers they attempted, so let's just say I'm not his friend anymore. Story 70. Friend knew I had a crush for a girl. He kept giving me strength. A few weeks later, I knew, by a third friend, they were sort of dating. Bottom line, after all that crap was sorted out, the girl started dating the other guy. Story 71. I was in the hospital having my first child. 2 of my friends were going around telling anyone who would listen that my boyfriend wasn't the father. My boyfriend never doubted me, and our son looks just like a mini version of him. 15 years and 3 more kids later, the boyfriend is now my husband, and those friends have been out of our lives for a long time now. Story 72. My 20-year friend decided to start gaslighting me, despite knowing I have extreme anxiety issues. I begged and begged him to cut it out for 4 ducking years, but he wouldn't, and when I asked why, he said it was funny watching me get upset. I didn't want to lose my only friends, but I had to make the decision to be alone and mentally sane. They still blame me and crap on me behind my back. Evil mother duckers. Story 73. My roommate, whom I had supported through and basically coached to finish his first marathon when no one else showed up. He worked behind my back to get my GF to break up with me at the time. First in a long line of people to betray me, and for reasons I can never understand. Story 74. My best friend would tell guys to act like they liked me to prove that I would like anyone that showed interest in me. This went on for a couple years, and her sister kept track of it in a book. Story 75. An ex broke up with me and never gave me a reason why. Ended up at a Halloween social with my now ex-friend. She went home with him and they ducked. Turns out she called him and told him I cheated so she could duck him. He raw-dogged her. She didn't tell him she had herpes. Glad that mess is out of my life. Story 76. Had a mental breakdown in college and spent a weekend on a mandatory hold in the psych ward. When I got out, I found out a close friend of mine was telling all about what happened and how crazy I was. She claimed she was just concerned and was trying to get advice. It's been almost 4 years, and I haven't spoken to her since. Don't kick a person while they're down. Sheesh. Story 77. There was a gal who was so close to me that I considered her to be a kind of mother to me. Saw her talking in a group chat about how people that hate me just don't know how to train her properly. Like a dog, still hurts. Story 78. Paid for a Euro trip with the terms she would pay me back over the course of a few months. Our friendship ended during the trip, and she never paid me back. $2K down the drain.